Over the course of a single year, the worst prospect pool in the entire NHL added so many pieces that they're now a middle-of-the-pack development pool highlighted by a true blue-chip player. Today, we break down top to bottom the Boston Bruins prospect pool.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this show, we break down everything prospects related for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. I'm your host, Sebastian Hyde, the USA scout over at Elite Prospects. And on today's episode, we're going to be breaking down the Boston Bruins prospect pool, which we talked about in our massive summertime series over at Elite Prospects, where we broke down and ranked every single pool in the entire league across 32 teams. And I led the article on the Boston Bruins. We had contributions from all of our regional scouts, so I certainly didn't write the entire thing, but I did edit it, put it together, and finalize the rankings that were found in that article. So that article is going to kind of be the outline for today's episode as we talk about each of the players that we ranked of the 24 players, starting off at number 1 and working our way down the list. So if you're more of a casual fan, the first segment really is going to be the one that's most noteworthy to you, with the big names, the guys that you really have to know. And later on the episode, we're going to do a few more of the deeper cuts of players that are maybe a bit more long shots to make it, but have some really intriguing aspects that we definitely want to highlight as well. So we have a really exciting show here for you in store today. And on tomorrow's episode, we'll be doing a very similar kind of structure, but for the Montreal Canadiens, another article that I also led over at Elite Prospects, and the Boston Bruins. So for today's focus, ended up as the 17th top prospect pool across the league. Just a single year after finishing at 32nd, a really big jump in quality, going from a pool that was highlighted by Dean Letourneau, who is a very toolsy but very long-term project of a player. He's massive at 6'7", but just still has to put the tools together to gain consistency. And for him to be the number one guy headlining a pool, that's definitely on the weaker end of the National Hockey League. But this year is a completely different story, because let's just kick things off here, right up at number 1, James Hagens, a fantastic get for the Boston Bruins in the first round of the 2025 NHL draft at 7th overall, I believe. I don't think it was 8th. And he's a player that was very much in the discussion as a even unanimous number 1 pick for quite a long time during the draft cycle last year, really through from the summer and even the D-1 season all the way through to like December, January. James Hagens had a lock on the number 1 spot and ended up falling all the way to the Bruins, more than halfway through the top 10. And in terms of pure skill and game-breaking ability and just put the team on your back when they need you most, this player has some of the highest upside in the entire draft class. He's an expert playmaker, an elite level skater. He moves with such fluidity and speed. There's so much to love in how he is able to leave his fingerprints on a game when he takes part. And even though he perhaps wasn't quite as dominant as some people had hoped in his freshman college season with Boston College last campaign, he was also playing on a line with Ryan Leonard and Gabe Perreault, 2 of the best players in the entire college ranks. So for him to not be the one leading the offense night in, night out on that line has almost more to say about those vets of the college hockey who are, of course, also making the step to the NHL this season already than it does about James Hagens. He is not the biggest guy in the world, and I think he still has to build up some of the physical tools to withstand contact in tight areas, get to the middle of the ice. But this guy's at his best when he's attacking at speed. He's able to dangle through tight areas. His high-end processing speed, just being able to solve problems at his highest pace, was probably the best among the entire draft class in 2025. And he's able to add to that really impressive shooting skill that he didn't show off quite as much in his draft year as he did in his D-1, but this guy has first line center upside. Like, you cannot look beyond that. This player has significant potential to be a game-breaking talent for the Boston Bruins, and to acquire that in the very first year of kind of the retool, rebuild phase, whatever you want to call it, that the Boston Bruins are kind of in right now, is an absolute haul and a half. A really, really great acquisition, and a great player to be headlining a prospect pool. So James Hagens, having that blue chip player in the lineup, is going to make such a massive difference for the Boston Bruins long term, and he can make the jump to the NHL in maybe 2 years' time, maybe a year's time if he's truly dominant this season. But in terms of the physical growth, I think 2 more years in college would serve him well, but he certainly could adapt as well a year earlier. So a player that could be in the NHL sooner rather than later, and is going to be incredibly entertaining when he does. In terms of stylistic comparisons, think of a player like Logan Cooley. Hagens has a similar style of how he impacts the game. Moving on, at number 2 in the prospect rankings here, we have Dean Letourneau. Again, massive, 6'7", 214 pounds as a right shot center. And he was a teammate of James Hagens this previous season at Boston College, and had a very different story in terms of production. Whereas Hagens scored 37 points in 37 games, Letourneau had 0 goals and 3 assists in 36 games. But I think that has less to do with who this prospect is, and a lot more to do about the circumstances that he was kind of forced into. Boston College needed bottom 6 size and heft, really, going into last season. So they rushed Dean Letourneau, just completely jumping the USHL season to make the jump immediately from prep school to college, which was just a bit too much for this player, I think, to just be keeping up with the pace of things. But he still has so much to go for him in terms of toolkit, and I'm expecting a really big jump in terms of responsibility and production next season, as he also plays with more skilled line mates and gets bigger minutes. This guy is a physical beast, obviously, with that size, but really what makes him special, what makes him stand out, is his fluidity on puck, the handling, the passing ability, the pass selection, the vision as a playmaker. There's a lot to love with what this guy can do from a skill standpoint alone, and I think that really is something that's going to set him apart in the coming seasons. But he was always going to be a long-term project. He was never going to be a guy that would be NHL ready in 3 or 4 years. He was always a 5 or 6 year project, and that's still the outlook now, right? 4 or 5 years from now, yeah, I think that there's an NHL role for this guy, and if he hits it, if he hits his upside, you're talking about like a second line skilled power forward that very few teams have a player in this mold, especially playing at center. Very interesting profile. So he stays at number 2 on our board, but there is a bit more risk with him than with our number 3 player, which is Fraser Minten. Acquired from the Toronto Maple Leafs at the trade deadline in that Brendan Carlo deal, Fraser Minten was targeted by the Boston Bruins for his NHL readiness. This is a polished player. He plays with intensity. He plays with physicality. He has a good shot. He gets to the dangerous areas in tight. He's able to withstand contact. He's played well already at the NHL level. Played 15 games with the Leafs last season, 6 games with the Bruins, and split the rest between the 2 AHL lineups of the organizations. And just across the board was effective, if unspectacular, at each of those stops over the course of last season. And I think that really is who this player is. He's a bottom 6 projection. You're not looking at a top 6 guy, but he's going to be that player really, really soon. He's close to his kind of upside as a third line player. Whether that ends up being at center on the wing is still kind of up in the air, but he's so intelligent in how he supports players off puck. He's engaged in the defensive zone. This guy back checks hard. He forechecks hard. Does a lot of the things that coaches and managers just love in their players and value in terms of both the intangibles and the intensity and engagement. So a lot to love with Fraser Minten, even if the upside isn't as high as other players on this list. And we got 2 more guys here to wrap up the first segment. William Moore starting it off there. 2nd round pick this year. Fantastic value at 51st overall. I want to say it was that he was selected by the Boston Bruins. Another guy who's going to be playing college hockey in Boston this year. So a lot of Boston guys already playing in Boston in the college ranks, but he's over at Boston University. He spent last season with the NTDP, and this guy has some really fantastic tools. He was really hyped as a like GTHL prospect when he was developing in Canada, in Toronto. But after moving over to the US for the NTDP development system, we really saw him coming into his own a little bit as a playmaker, as a high IQ player. He's got an absolute cannon of a shot, and there's a lot of physical runway. He's still very physically raw and unrefined as currently constructed. He's a bit of a beanstalk, 6'2", 174 pounds. He's got to add some weight onto his frame, but there's a lot to love with this player in terms of the on-puck capabilities, the anticipation, being able to outthink basically every other player on the ice at the junior level. I'm very curious to see how he handles that jump in competition, both in terms of still creating consistently and having the separating skills to be a game breaker offensively, but also in how he's able to resist physicality and resist contact. So really big season coming up in his freshman campaign at BU. So William Moore is a very interesting player, but the tools could elevate him into a real, like, solid middle six capacity, and that includes a second line projection. So a lot to love on the tool side with Will Moore. Then we have another William here with Will Zellers, who is developing in the USHL with the Green Bay Gamblers last season, and I watched him a bunch, and he won the MVP honors for the season in the USHL, scored 44 goals, 71 points in 52 games. Fantastic output. And that breakout campaign also earned him a trade in the NHL, being moved from the Colorado Avalanche to the Boston Bruins in that Charlie Coyle transaction. And I think that there's also just so much to like with Will Zellers from the tools standpoint. He's also a bit raw. He's not a sure thing. He's got to build up his physicality. He's 5'10", 176. Still has to play on the inside in the middle lane a bit more frequently and effectively, but he has the mobility, the evasiveness, the high-end handling, a really good shot, good playmaking vision. With the puck on his stick, he was genuinely the biggest game breaker in the entire USHL last season in terms of just being able to take over shifts. A really, really impressive year there for a guy coming straight out of prep school hockey. And even though he can be a bit tunnel vision defensively and there's an inconsistent motor at times, and the inside contact physical habits definitely need work, and he can skate his way to problems sometimes. These are all junior habits that I think are going to erode over time, that he's going to be able to iron out as he also takes the leap to playing in college. I think that the college level is really going to do a lot of good for him. And he's going to the University of North Dakota, which is a program where he's going to learn how to play better two-way hockey, play better in terms of his physicality. I think it'll be a really good learning environment for the player with specifically what he needs to develop. And he'll be playing alongside some extremely skilled players, right? Keaton Verhoeven, potentially a top 2, top 3 selection in the 2026 NHL draft. Almost said 2023 there. Time flies. As well as a whole bunch of drafted players, whether you're talking about Cole Reshny, recent first-round pick of the Calgary Flames. Max Swanson has been a really productive junior player drafted by the Pittsburgh Penguins. There's a lot to like there. EJ Emery, a great shutdown defenseman, went in the first round in 2025 to 2024 to the New York Rangers. There's a lot of talent in that lineup, so Zellers is going to have to set himself apart a little bit, but I think he'll be able to. So he falls at number 5 here in the Boston Bruins prospect pool. But that wraps up this first segment. In the next one, we're going to be looking at players ranked 6 through 14, picking up the pace a little bit, going a bit more quick fire. But first, a quick message from our sponsors here at Locked On NHL Prospects. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for kickoff and with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay if you really want to double down on multiple takes for a same night, and even jumping in live as the action unfolds. The choice truly is yours with FanDuel. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, let's keep this episode rolling here as we break down the kind of middle of the pack of the Boston Bruins prospect pool. And we're kicking it off with a guy that's been in that top 3 discussion for a really long time within the Bruins organization among young players. And that's Fabian Lysell, the Swedish winger, very dynamic, whether you're talking about the handling, the elite level skating. Mechanically, this player is really gifted. but consistency has been something that a bit hard fought for Lysell, and the window of opportunity for him to really make the jump and establish himself as a true top 9 NHLer, which he has all the tools in the world to do, that window's closing slowly. So we'll see how this season unfolds for Lysell, but he's going to have a driving role in the offense with the Providence Bruins in the AHL. And he's a guy that, again, just brings so much talent to the equation. And he's also really built up a better defensive motor. He's become a bit more involved in battling as well for pucks. And his offensive creation has become a little bit more projectable rather than just slinging pucks to the middle of the ice from the perimeter and hoping something sticks. There's a lot more planning and calculating involved now in the way that he creates his offense, which I think should bring some hope as well to the Bruins faithful. So he's a very interesting player. And in terms of pure tools, remains one of the most dynamic players in this prospect pool behind James Hagens. So definitely a player to still keep an eye on. At number 7, we have a massive riser, a Latvian checking forward, Dan Locmelis. He's a fantastic center. I love watching this guy play, and he was lights out for UMass in the NCAA last season. He played 40 games with Massachusetts, scoring 8 goals and 33 points. And was absolutely brilliant with Latvia at the World Championships against men, scoring 4 goals and 6 points in 7 games, really leading the charge offensively for Latvia. And right before then, he got his entry-level contract, and he got a call-up to the AHL. And with the Providence Bruins in 6 games at the end of the year, this guy scored 3 goals and 12 points. He went 2 points a game in his first 6 professional games, which is just absolutely insane. But what makes him so exciting isn't that he's like this generational offensive talent. Don't expect that production to really maintain itself moving forward. What he does at such a high degree is working really hard. This guy is constantly scanning the ice, moving his feet, moving into position, and he just is able to, with the combination of outworking and outmaneuvering, consistently find space. And he's a really, really intelligent and adaptable player in that sense. I think that his toolkit is really adaptable. The passing, I think, is probably the best of his puck skills, but he moves quite well. He thinks the game well. He's aware. He's pacey. Bringing the physical game up a notch will really make a big difference, because I think it is going to be as a bottom 6, do-it-all Swiss Army knife checker that he's going to make his money in the NHL. So boosting up the strength and the physicality a bit will go a long way, but he's such an exciting player. At number 8, we have Cooper Simpson, a guy I loved watching last season. Really smooth skater, mechanically gifted. He's got a howitzer of a shot, really great puck handler as well. Does all of his work off the rush at speed. He loves taking on defenders head on, trying to make them miss in a one-on-one, trying to create and score at speed in motion. He can beat goaltenders from range. He was just dominant in the Minnesota high school circuit last season as well with Shakopee High, scoring 49 goals and 83 points in 31 games. But when he made the jump to the USHL at year's end in 9 games, he scored 7 goals and 8 points, and he was just a really, really dominant creator. He does have some boomer bust qualities in him in terms of consistent effort level, consistent details, consistent pace, and overall consistency that's going to have to be built up over time. But I'm so excited to see what he's able to do in the USHL this season with the Youngstown Phantoms, which is going to be just an absolutely dominant team, top to bottom. They've got so much quality in terms of also draft eligibles like Jack Hextall and Evan Jardine. There's a lot of talent in that roster, and they're one of my 2 favorites to win the Clark Cup Championship heading into the season alongside the Muskegon Lumberjacks, who just won last year as well. But yeah, Cooper Simpson is a really skilled player that should not fly under the radar too much. Moving on, we have a really rock-solid left shot defenseman in Elliot Groenewold. He was playing with Quinnipiac in the NCAA last season, and he's just so reliable. He's incredibly difficult to beat one-on-one. He's a tremendous skater, like definitely an above-average mover, and he's able to just neutralize opponents repeatedly. He's definitely a player that just seeks to do high-value plays consistently in terms of the defensive end, and even in the breakout, he loves to jump up and join the offense, try to make a play that creates something rather than just delegating that role of creation to a forward. He has a lot of tools that I think could translate to a bottom pairing capacity in the National Hockey League. So in terms of our top 9 there, he definitely fits right in. Then to finish up the top 10, we've got Georgii Merkulov, who's been like really a leading scorer in the AHL for the Providence Bruins 2 years running now. Scored 54 points in 59 games last season. And he's just a guy that has the high-end passing ability, above average shot, above average handling, and above average sense to compensate for subpar skating and physicality. The question is going to be, will he be able to bring the physicality up to a level that he's able to tread water in an NHL bottom six? That really is the question of his projection, because he has all the tools to be a really good offensive depth creator on a third line, but the physicality has to kind of take a step, the pace as well. The smaller stature doesn't help there, but I think overall he's still a really exciting piece in terms of the more depth projections within the Boston Bruins organization. Then we have a clever playmaker from college hockey in Beckett Hendrickson. You can definitely see how the Boston Bruins just keep dipping their fingers back into the NCAA and USA pool. They love developing their players in college. And Beckett Hendrickson is one of these guys that had a maybe pedestrian freshman campaign with the University of Minnesota last season, scoring 3 goals and 12 points in 39 games, but he still showed everything that makes him a really interesting prospect. He's very physically engaged. He's constantly outworking opponents. He's a battle machine. But on top of that, he brings real playmaking creativity. But more than anything, I think it's the quick thinking to make passing plays precisely and rapidly at speed. His skating is definitely his weakest tool. He definitely has to work on that a little bit, but the tools for a bottom six guy are definitely here. I definitely like the overall toolkit that Hendrickson brings to the equation. Then we've got Liam Pettersson at number 12 here, who is a mobile left shot defenseman who was just drafted in the 2025 draft. And he has a lot of things going for him that made him a really interesting player for us. The high-end mobility is really intriguing. The overall blend of puck skills has a lot of runway and headroom to grow further in the coming seasons as he's developing in Sweden. And even though the physical game definitely still has some work to do, that's going to come as he fills out his frame. He's 6'2", 170. When he builds that weight, I think NHL playing weight, you're talking 190 to 200 pounds for this player. Once he's able to get closer to that range, I think that he's going to be able to resist contact a lot better, but improving the habits and the mechanics of gaining leverage and just holding his position, being stable on his feet. That's going to go a long way to kind of crystallizing his NHL potential as well moving forward. Then we have a couple of AHL guys here to wrap up the second segment. Frederic Brunet, a really solid 6'3" left shot defenseman who played solid minutes with the Providence Bruins and even got a game with Boston last season. He's just really, really solid. He's physically involved. He keeps things simple. He moves the puck quickly, doesn't really try to do too much with the puck on his stick. He knows his limitations really well. I think he's a guy that is just going to be a really solid call-up option, bottom pairing guy if he really hits for the Boston Bruins moving forward, but he's probably quite close to his eventual upside at this stage as he's like 23 years old or so. Then we have John Farinacci as well at number 14 to wrap up this second segment, who's a really solid defensive center there with the Providence Bruins. He scored 38 points in 58 games last season, but none of his offensive tools or abilities, I would say, project as real standouts to build a game around. But the two-way details, the intensity, the ability to skate the right routes, adopt the right positions, just be a good support piece in all 3 zones. That's all there. He'll have to further develop his pace of play and the skating to really make that jump and establish a spot on a bottom line for the Boston Bruins. But he could be a really solid 4C moving forward there in Massachusetts. That wraps up this second segment. In the final one, we're going to wrap things up with players 15 through 24 in our Boston Bruins prospect pool rankings from elite prospects. But first, a quick message from our sponsors who are Locked On NHL Prospects. All right, let's wrap up the show here in the final segment with the last 9 players or 10 players to look over here in the episode. So we'll make this quick. We got Ryan Walsh first and foremost at 15. He's a player that really broke out with Cornell last season, scoring 17 goals and 31 points in 36 games. And he's all about the details, whether providing off-puck supports, blocking lanes defensively, or popping out into pockets of space in the offensive zone. He's constantly supporting his teammates with good anticipation and pattern recognition, which stood out amongst NCAA players last season in my viewings. He has subpar puck skill in terms of the handling ability. The skating also definitely needs some work, but with a bit more physical snarl and a little bit more mechanical refinement to how he moves around the ice, I think in 2 or 3 years' time, he could be a really solid Swiss Army knife on a fourth line or even a third line if he really hits with the Boston Bruins, who just is a line elevator. He makes the players he plays with better rather than standing out individually by making massive, massive differences with his puck skills or his on-puck ability. Then we have at number 16, sticking in college hockey, because seemingly we're doing that for the entire show here today with what consists of the Bruins prospect pool. We have Christopher Pelosi, a Quinnipiac player who scored 24 points in 38 games last season. And his game is all about power. He shoots hard, he skates hard, he battles hard, does everything with intensity. And he does it with a desire to bruise his opposition. There's a lot to like in terms of that set of skills and habits that he has. And he's able to win his races to loose pucks, even though he's not the most gifted or fluid skater in the world. And I think that with a little bit more of the net front skill being refined, I think that he could really be a solid 4C as well in Boston. There's quite a few players in this pool that have a lot of the tools and habits that teams look for their bottom of the lineup centermen. So lots to like there in terms of the depth among this prospect pool. At 17, we have a more skilled and intense center as well from Russia, Kirill Yemelyanov, who was also just selected this year in the 2025 NHL draft. And he's a pure bottom six projection again, but he has a lot of this engagement both on and off puck that really made a difference at the NHL level last season. And if he's able to turn his flashes of creative skill into more consistency, maybe the NHL route really will open up as an option in the coming seasons. At number 18, we have Andre Gasseau, who's going to be the captain at Boston College this season. And he's a big power forward, 6'4", 218 pounds, got a heavy shot, a big frame, pretty decent support habits as well. He doesn't really waste possession. He keeps cycles going. He extends possessions, and he's really solid at the net front as well. But I think overall the handling and passing might hold him back a little bit, which might make him a bit more of a fourth line guy than a third line guy at the NHL level. At 19, we've got Vashek Blanar, a very interesting and intriguing selection from the 2025 draft. He's big at 6'4", 183 pounds, but very unconventionally for an NHL draft pick. Spent basically his entire season at the J18 level in Sweden, playing against under 18 competition rather than typical junior U20 competition, which is a full league down basically from the J20 there in Sweden. And on top of that, he wasn't even playing the J18 National, which is the national under 18. He was playing in the regional under 18. So very, very under the radar pick in terms of the platform that he had to show his skills and the competition he was playing against last season. But he's a really interesting defenseman with that size, with really impressive handling skill. There's a lot to like why he might be an exception to the general rule of not selecting from this circuit of Swedish hockey in the NHL draft, but definitely has more advanced creative abilities than we would expect from a player of this profile at this age. So there's definitely some boom potential with Blanar, but there's a lot of risk as well that he does not pan out and take the necessary steps to eventually become an NHL player. At number 20, we have Ty Gallagher, a hard-working defenseman playing in the NCAA last season with Colorado College. In terms of tools, he's pretty much below average across the board. He's not a great skater. He's not a fantastic shot or passer or handler. Doesn't think the game at a really proficient level or have a physical advantage at 6 feet and 196 pounds. but he works really hard. He keeps things very simple. His greatest strength is knowing his limitations and trying to be as effective as possible in terms of contributing to the team within those. So if he makes it, he's probably going to be a seventh defenseman, can fill it in as a number 6 when need be. But I think it's a lot more the mentality with Ty Gallagher that sets him apart than the actual tools. At 21, we have Loke Johansson, a 6'3" left shot defenseman playing in the QMJHL last season with the Moncton Wildcats. And he's hard to miss. He's a big guy, right? With that 6'3" frame, and he has a crushing mindset. He likes to finish his hits. This is a very physically involved player, and that only stood out more at the QMJHL level. But the puck skills might limit him a little bit. The handling needs a lot of work in terms of professional projection. But overall, I think that with a bit of refinement, he has a defensive acumen, he has a physical mindset, and a desire to build smart breakouts, which is going to be really key to retaining possession when he's able to gain it in the defensive zone to play the Boston Bruins style of play. At 22, we have Oskar Jellvik, who was playing with Boston College last season, and he took a really big step back in terms of production their last campaign, scoring just 13 points in 23 games. And that came off the back of a 42-point in 41 game season where he was the line mate of Cutter Gauthier. And Gauthier's graduation to the NHL had a really big effect on Jellvik's production. And he struggled a lot to kind of make his line his own and drive play. And he was much more complimentary as well at the NCAA level last season. Doesn't really have the physical tools to be a checking force at the NHL level, but he skates decently well. He has decent passing and handling flashes. But my question really is, like, what is the single ability with Jellvik that's going to set him apart and make him special enough to cement a spot in an NHL lineup at the end of the day? And there's still enough skill here to include him in these rankings, but this is probably the last year that he makes the cut. Last but not least, the last player on this board is Brett Harrison. Had a decent campaign with the Providence Bruins last season, scoring 17 points in 46 games. But the skating really is something that could keep him outside the NHL completely. He has a good shot. He's able to beat goalies cleanly. He's physically engaged. He's able to win his battles, but that skating, the lack of skill as a puck handler and the handling to compensate for the low speeds that he plays at because of his skating is probably going to keep him as more of a depth organizational piece who can fill in case of injuries in the NHL if need be, but is more than anything an AHL player. But that wraps up the rankings here. And I would absolutely love to hear from you down in the comments down below, especially if you are a Boston Bruins fan. What are your thoughts on this prospect pool and how it's evolved and changed in the last year with the additions of exciting pieces like, of course, James Hagens, but also trade acquisitions like Fraser Minten, like Will Zellers, and the drafting of Will Moore? There's a lot of talent that was added, especially in the top 5 range of this prospect pool. I'd absolutely love to hear what your thoughts are on the hope for the organization moving forward and what direction you want your team to take in the next 2-3 years. Do you want them to double down on this approach of rebuilding, building youth, building through the draft and trade? Or is this kind of an ideal time to go more for a retool aspect where you've gotten a lot of talent in just a single year of doing this retooling phase? Do you want to like immediately try to leverage that into NHL success? I'd love to hear from your opinions down below, but that wraps things up here for me today. On tomorrow's show, you can look forward to a Montreal Canadiens themed episode breaking down the prospect pool. And we'll be doing a few more of those as well in the coming weeks, looking at teams like the Chicago Blackhawks, Toronto Maple Leafs, Utah Mammoth, and San Jose Sharks. So a lot to look forward to here on the channel as the hockey season is resuming and the podcast is really warming back up as well now for the season. So thank you so much for listening and for tuning back in after a bit of a quieter summer here from us here on the podcast. So thank you so much for listening if you still are. And I hope to catch you tuning in again very, very soon.